Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Steiner.
Here.
Rouse.
Here.
Dunlavy.
Here.
Grant.
Here.
Here.
Wilson.
Here.
Rose.
Here.
Easter. Here. Shy.
Here.
Dornet.
Here.
And I just want to announce that I am the presiding officer and I'm also a voting member this evening. Approval of the agenda would be in order. So moved. Second. Any other comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Citizens Forum. Tonight at the Citizens Forum, that would be anything discussed other than budget. The public hearing for the budget is when you will speak, if you want to speak on the budget, you would speak there at the open public hearing for the 2015 budget. So the Citizens Forum would be for anything else if you want to discuss that. And this is a chance for citizens to make comments. Please be courteous at all times. Remember that this is not meant to be an opportunity to make personal attacks on any city official. No action or lengthy discussions can take place as a result of comments made at this time. Is there any citizens who care to speak at this time? No citizens care to speak at this time? Well, then we will open the public hearing. I need a motion. Do I have to open the public hearing? Okay. Yes.
I'll make a motion to open public hearing.
Second. Any other comments or questions? And this would be for the 2015 budget public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Would anyone care to speak at this time on the 2015 budget? Anyone care to speak at the public hearing for the budget? No one cares to speak on the 2015 budget? This is your chance. Come on, Paul. Yes, sir.
Seeing none, I would make a motion that we close the public hearing for the 2015 budget.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. The public hearing is closed. Then we will move on to the 2015 budget discussion. Any council members care to discuss anything, or Chuck, do you have anything you want to say? I know we had a meeting last night, and I don't know, Mark, you would like to, you want to give your overview
Sure.
of what you did last night first? Okay.
Sure. Let's go through this quickly. There's a summary of the budget that should have been provided as a handout to the public. And first I want to apologize to our finance chair, Mr. Blank. I had his name spelled wrong 3 times in my memo, so got it right once and wrong 3 times. So the one that you have tonight is correct. Just a couple comments on the budget. The property taxes being levied are just slightly down from 2014 based on the Finance Committee's action last evening. It's about $50,000 less. There are a couple of things I want to point out. I guess I call them concerns of mine as this plan was put together, and I think concerns that the council should, keep your eyes on going forward this year. As you know, I won't be around, so and certainly other staff can assist you with that. But I think Toby brought this up last night, page 20 of the budget under Public Works. He's cut the contracted services line item in half. A little nervous about that, quite frankly, especially the way this winter started out. I know his intent is to try and do more in-house and use less contracted services. I guess we'll just have to see how that rolls out. And I know Toby mentioned last night that he was really concerned about that. Under the capital fund on page 28, I made a note there that based on what is being proposed to be purchased in the 2015 budget, that there will only be approximately $202,000 left in the capital fund going into 2016. That is not very much money, quite frankly. And half of that is over half of it actually is committed to a second payment on a patrol truck that's in the public works capital purchases for 2015. So you're only going to have less than $100,000 left to work with for other departments and needs. And as you know, the police chief already gave up a squad car for this year, and a lot of other departments gave up numerous items. So that's going to be really tight. And we're still trying to kind of chase this issue down through the audits, but basically what happened was coming out of 2011, there was a deficit in the capital fund of about $300,000. And going into 2012, the capital budget was over $400,000, so there was a deficit there already. And the actual expenditures that year were over $500,000. So it just kind of started to be a compound problem. And so this is an area you really have to watch all year long. As departments buy things, you got to make sure their bids and the quotes and stuff that they get on the equipment are consistent with what they brought forward during the budget process, and don't start going over by $50,000–$60,000, because in the end you end up in a hole, and you've only borrowed so much money to carry it for 3 years. And so I don't, at this point, know what your solution is going to be in 2016. I think that's an issue that you're going to have to deal with, and one that certainly I think is going to be an important budget issue going forward this whole year. I want to make note on page 32 under the airport budget. Some great work that the Public Works Director's put in there. He's leveraging basically $15,000 of city money to obtain over $300,000 of equipment that will be used at the airport and by Public Works. And that, of course, is through airport funding, assuming that funding comes through, which we anticipate it will, but there's always those ifs. But I think those kind of things are really beneficial for the city, and Toby's to be commended to be able to put a program together like that to be able to acquire equipment that is needed by the city for really little dollars of city money. If you go to my memo, just some high points there. This year's tax rate was $8.58 per thousand. The tax rate under this 2015 budget is established at $8.62 per thousand, so that's a 4-cent increase. That means on an $80,000 home, the city taxes would go up $3. On a $100,000 home, the city taxes would go up $4. So it's pretty much a flat budget with what past year was. Wages have been frozen for all city staff, except for police, which have a union contract in place. The police will get a 2% increase on the first of the year and 1% increase on July 1st. There is an issue in here that is not currently included in the budget numbers. The Finance Committee approved a motion to have the employees of the village, of the city, pick up the first $500 on the HSA for the health insurance. That will That would save the city $12,000. So I would assume that that would be a separate motion that the council will need to act on based on a recommendation from finance. And if that motion is approved, we would have to go back in and adjust the department budgets to reflect that in the fringe benefits, and we would be able to reduce the fund balance amount by $12,000 because there would be if the employee paying the HSA payment would reduce the amount of fund balance needed to balance the budget. This budget is at a point where it does propose to utilize $176,102 of undesignated funds from the city's fund balance, which is just over $1.7 million currently. Part of the argument for that is the one-time things that are occurring for 2015. One was the loss of the expenditure restraint revenue. I don't think anybody anticipated that. And as this budget is built, you will be in position to get that money back in 2016. So that shouldn't be an ongoing problem for you. I noted the ambulance payment to build up the ambulance service fund balance of $35,000. Mark indicated that that may not be a one-time only, although the latest information I heard from the ambulance service is that they haven't even decided if they're going to need this $35,000, and it could be lower. So I'm kind of anticipating if they decide that they can lower it significantly or may not even need it, that maybe it's only going to be a one-time thing, or maybe the one-time is going to happen a year later. I guess that's the other could take place. And then lastly, under the Affordable Care Act, Federal Affordable Care Act, every employer basically that has health insurance gets charged for every member of their group that's under a health plan. And I think it was $5.25 this year. Next year it's going to be $7.25. It's a one-time fee, but that's a one-time fee that has to be paid. We have not passed that fee down to the employees in this budget. We have budgeted for it in the overall expenditures of the city. And so there again is another example of something that came along that wasn't anticipated at one time. Those three things total up to almost $129,000 of the $176,000 fund balance use in this budget. There's a highlighted in italics is a proposal that was brought forth by Finance Committee member Bill Zeiner, and there was a motion that he made at the Finance Committee meeting. That's laying on the desk in front of you in terms of finance minutes. We decided to put that in front of you just so everybody can kind of see what it says, so when we get to that point, I don't know if it's going to be Bill making that motion or somebody else, but at least you know what the context of that motion is, so it doesn't get too complicated to understand. The budget falls within the levy limits. It also falls within the expenditure restraint limits by about $2,000. So those are both good things. Under utilities, there is a 10% residential customer increase that's anticipated happening July 1st on wastewater. And the reason for that is treatment plant upgrades that are beginning as early as the spring and probably will take place all through 2015 and perhaps even in 2016. So there's a revenue generation that's necessary to pay the debt, towards the debt on those treatment plant improvements that will be made. And that's the reason for that sewer rate increase. That was acted on by the utility board sometime back. We're just following through with it in terms of this year's budget. Alderperson Dornick had a alternative budget proposal that he wanted considered going into 2015. Basically what what this amounts to is that there is room to raise the tax levy, and there is room to raise the tax amount. Actually, you could raise it quite a bit if you wanted to. And I think Alderperson Dornick's thought process was, and we can speak more to it, but it was that he'd rather tax the citizens at this budget and have them pay for the services that are being provided, than tax too much down out of the fund balance. And so his proposal was to have a higher tax rate of 28 cents, increase the amount being taxed to the citizens by about a little over $55,000, and reduce the fund balance by an equal amount. That particular, I think the vote on that last night at Finance was 4-1 against that proposal. But nevertheless, that was considered and certainly can be considered by the council. I think other than that, I just want to, for my acknowledgement, state the department heads for their hard work. There was a lot of budget cutting that had to take place. They had to make a lot of sacrifices to make this budget work. And so we thank them and their staff for all their work in working through the budget and finding things that they could do without or delay to a future time. I want to acknowledge Mark for a lot of hard work that he put in. He spent a lot of time with me and with others. He made trips around to department heads. He made trips to outside agencies that had funding requests in to make sure that he understood what they were requesting and why their requests were what they were. And so he was a very knowledgeable source for me to depend on in terms of working through the budget that I really had no knowledge of when I started here about a month ago. And lastly, I want to thank the council. It's been a very interesting experience. I think I've expanded my knowledge. As I said in here, no two communities do things alike, and we do it different than I was used to. But it doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It's a different, actually a whole different format of the budget than I was used to. So I had to learn some things there, and I think it's expanded my horizons. So I appreciate the opportunity for me to work for you and to assist with this budget. And again, I guess just to emphasize that the final on the budget that was recommended and the tax rate recommended by the Finance Committee was the $8.62 per thousand of assessed value.
Yes, Mary.
Just one point, we did not vote on the proposal. We did not vote on Dornick's proposal. We only voted on Steiner's proposal. There was no vote for no. No, that's right, Eddie. The other thing, it was just, since that one passed, this one didn't pass. I think that's why we didn't do it. Then the other thing, I just wanted to point out that Mr. Kell pointed out the things that were one-time expenses, and one of the things we could use the fund balance for are one-time expenses. And then we had asked last night at the Finance Committee, wouldn't the payments to the past administrator be considered one-time payments, but they said they're going to be taking that out of this budget, that they found money in this budget, but that was something that our financial advisor, Ayler, said would be a one-time expense. And I just want to point out that this amount that we get back, this year we're going to get back $89,000. Last year we didn't get it back, so just so you know the scope of that, so that really made up a lot of the deficit. So we're really pleased that we're going to be able to get that money back. And I just want to ask one other question, Chuck. It says no new employees or new positions, but we will be hiring an administrator. And
you'll be replacing vacant positions, but there's no new employees over the current workforce.
Oh, so no new positions would probably, that was my question. And then I had thought we talked, maybe not, Gene, you would know, I thought we talked that we needed to replace a lineman for the one that is deceased. Oh, okay, thank you.
Great.
Yes, Mark.
All right, a couple things. The Finance Committee is recommending that be, and that passed 4-1 in committee, that the $500 HSA contribution be added back in. That would save $12,000 from fund balance essentially, so we would, instead of 176, we'd be at 160. And I'll make that motion to add back the $500 contribution for employee HSA.
I'll second that. Is there any other, oh, sorry. Yes, Mary Beth.
The charging the employees $500 would mean that, except for the police employees, but except for the captain and the chief, would have to pay that. I'm speaking against that $12,000 expenditure, since the fund balance stands at 54.8%. 25% is prudent, and that's what the county has, 25%. And I consulted Ehlers, our financial advisor, and this would be something that he felt that all of this deficit could be used from the fund balance. We're not going to be proposing that. However, I do not think that the employees should have to, since we aren't giving any raises and we can't give any raises, I don't think that the $500 should be charged.
Great.
At a budget meeting, maybe it was 2 times ago, we had Captain Beggs speak out regarding our changes to the health, or at least proposed changes, and I seem to remember some numbers that he was throwing around that were significantly higher, somewhere around $2,500 and other figures, and I was just making sure that we're not doing more that's not written on this summary, because if we're not giving them any kind of wage increase outside of the union contract, and we're increasing something that significant, that is a major concern. So if somebody can clear that.
I think there was just different scenarios. Yes, Mark.
Yes, Greg, you're correct. Jean's correct. There were different scenarios that were being worked around as we knew we were in a deficit situation. So right now there is a zero. The current budget that you have in the board that we presented is a zero at all levels. And so my thought with 500 is that it is something. I would love to give employees raises that they would raise. This is not the way it should be. However, if we were running a business in the private sector and our company wasn't making money, we wouldn't be giving raises, and if these health insurance costs came to the employer, they would be passed down to the employee. And we're in a situation where we aren't in a good cash flow situation. So I think it is prudent, and it's a little bit of a compromise to Greg's end that there was a scenario where it was about a $50,000 hit, which is about $1,000 or more per employee, depending on whether they're family or individual plan. And so this is a little bit, obviously, less than that, but it is something. I'm just looking at this 176, and we got to come up with it by March 1st. Is the proposals that came out of finance. Any chunks we can make that be lower is going to make that a little bit easier. And this is a 5-figure chunk.
Yes, Mary Beth.
Yes, I wanted to point out that when we started talking about insurance, the insurance went up, our insurance went up 38%. And I had noted in the paper that Shawano's remained the same, so I just called over there to see what they did. And they have their insurance through the state fund. So then I came back to the committee and asked if we had applied through the state fund, and for the past 2 years we haven't applied to the state fund. So Chuck looked into it, and it would be a lot lower. And we can't get in, however, he was 5 days too late for the premium period. So we were 5 days too late in getting what we prudently could have gotten as lower insurance for our employees. So what I'm saying is that I don't think it was the employee's fault that we didn't look into the lowest possible insurance possibility. So consequently, we will be able to, in April, perhaps get, there might be a penalty from getting out of the other insurance plan, but I just think that, this was a huge increase, which is what we're, so now we're charging something to the employees. So I think it might be corrected in April, but it certainly wasn't the fault of the employees that no one looked into the state fund.
Yes, Frank.
Well, the state fund may be cheaper. I think it's quite significant that we need to look for input from the city employees themselves and hear what they have to say about these things. We're making significant decisions regarding their health insurance, and I believe that they need to have an opportunity to be heard. And if we were to make such a change to a state plan or other significant changes to their health, that we need to look at hearing from them and giving them an ample opportunity to provide us some feedback. The $500 increase is something that, you know, is reasonable, but you know, if we were to go in the direction of a different plan just for the sake of cutting dollars, but at the same time sacrificing their health care coverage, you know, granted that's not at this meeting now, that might be in April, but that's something that takes some major looking into. So it might be an option down the road, but not at this point in time.
Well, I have to say that I don't think it's prudent by anyone on the council at this time where no one is getting a raise, that you're going to take $500 out of their pockets again. This is, they're going backwards, back. This is not fair to the employees. I can't go along with such a thing as that.
Just a few follow-up comments. You know, if we had an administrator in office, I think we would have been able to apply. We mentioned, of course, Chuck came 5 days too late. Which when he could have gotten to it that day he showed up 5 days earlier, and no one did apply. But we had professional staff that was ready to do that. The HSA payment is made in January. So if we delay this till April when we switch, there'll be a $3,000 payment made in January to the employee's HSA account that we would get back even if we switch. So we'll spend that money no matter what, even if we switch in April. We could have switched to a different plan that might have made some money, would have been differences in coverages. So it's not going to be an apples to apples if we switch to the state plan. It's going to be different. I don't know what that would have been, but it would have been different. So there are changes potentially to the healthcare coverage. And if Peggy would like to speak to this, she's been, you know, a very big proponent of this, saying, you know, this was started 20 years ago, that long ago, the HSA, that, you know, this was a phase-in thing where we started this way and encourage healthier living and those type of things. And the HSA gradually turns over to the employees. And they can comment on that.
It started about 6 to 8 years ago.
Okay, my mistake.
The one thing, I guess I would like to direct if we're still looking at switching over in April, because if we are looking at switching over in April, we're to pursue this. If there is a cost savings, that plan I do not believe is an HSA plan. Is that correct, Chuck?
No, no. Here's the default.
So to that end, we would make the HSA payment if we switched in April. That would still be money spent that the employee would get. That's fine, but they would have 4 months to use it, and then plan would change.
Do something? Well, I just have a question since I'm relatively new here. The HSA is fully funded by the city. There's no deductibles that have to be met? So then, okay, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to clarify this in my head because my HSA, I get a one-time deposit put in by my employer. I fund the rest, and I still have the high-end deductible that I need to meet before, you know, I start getting the reduced rates. So that's the only reason why I'm asking. So what you're saying is we're taking $500 away from that, what we put into the HSA?
Right?
Yes.
It's a $3,000 HSA,
Okay,
and we're asking that the employee pays the first $500. The city will pay the next $2,500.
okay.
So it's not reducing it from 3,000 to 25. We're
Okay,
keeping 3,000.
okay.
I think that's your question.
Yes, thank you.
I just want to make a comment. And when it was implemented 8 years ago, it was implemented with the understanding that eventually some of the employees would start picking up some of it, wasn't it? But it just never happened.
That's the
Yeah.
general progression of it.
Yeah, it should have been happening, but it just never really happened. but, and I understand that they're not getting raises here, but, yeah, I don't know if I'm for it or against it, I just seconded it, so it got on the floor.
I just wanted to say that the reason we didn't look into this is because we didn't have an administrator. Peggy told us that for the last 2 years, they haven't looked into it, and her impression was that it's always been higher. So I think the fact is, that we didn't look into it. She said for the past 2 years, we haven't looked into it. And in talking to Shano, I understand what Greg is saying. It's going to be a different plan, and we do have to evaluate that part. I'm just saying that at this point, since we have $1.7 million in our fund, we're not giving people the raise. I think that we should leave the employees alone, because this does reflect a cut.
Yes, Mark?
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, has employees filled out the open enrollment forms almost every year?
Correct.
So that's an incorrect statement. We've looked into plans many years, including last year.
We only looked at the state plan once before.
Yeah, the
But
state
we
plan,
always
but we
look-
looked at other plans and they've been denied by others as well, including this year.
This year so far, I've received the,
Just the one.
yeah, okay.
So we have looked into other plans, but it's not a correct statement. We
No,
have
it's at the
applied.
state.
So,
Yes, Greg?
Sorry for my coughing tonight, it's terrible. The way that I look at it is, if, as Mary Beth was saying, if we were to not give them a wage increase, flat freeze, and increase the $500, then they're going backwards. I know that Jim said that. But it would save $12,000. But that money would be bottled up into our fund balance. That would be, there for hard times down the road kind of situation. On the flip side, if we were to continue as is, then the employees would not be assessed that $500. That $12,000 would go into their paychecks, and that $12,000 would be able to be spent and continue to invigorate the Clintonville economy. They would be using that at local businesses and so forth, because it's money that would not be spent to the HSA. And so that's the other side of this coin, is we could leave the money in the bank and treat it for times of need, or we could let our employees use it in our community.
Anyone else have any comments on this? No more comments? Can you read the motion again, Peggy?
Motion by Dornick, second by Schley, to add $500 per employee towards the contribution of the HSA.
Roll call, please.
Slinert.
yes.
Crows.
No.
Dunlavy.
No.
Ram.
Yes.
Steenbach.
Abstain.
Wilson.
Yeah.
Rose.
No.
Easter.
No.
Schley.
No.
Dornick.
Yes.
Motion lost. Okay, then we will move on.
I would like to state, what do you call it, per your reasoning, or your no vote.
You want to let me know for the minutes and all that?
Yes.
Okay.
The reason why, I think that down the road, we're gonna have to do this. We're gonna have to start having the employees chip in. That is to be expected. I pay significantly more than that with my plan. But the reason I voted the way I did is because they're getting a freeze. That's all it is.
Okay. Yes, Mark.
Next option I'd like you to consider is the option number 2. That was in Administrator Powell's handout.
I think it's right in the front of our book.
It's in the front of your
Scenario
book,
budget.
just prior to the table.
Yeah.
Again, I'm looking for ways that, I'm not in favor of using fund balance to fund operating expenses. It's a bad business decision, period. If we can find ways to do it through Alderman Steinert's proposal, I'd like to explore those. I think, as I said before, anytime we can reduce that chunk by something, we need to take a look at. The mill rate of 8.86 is what I'd like to propose. is $22 per household. It is not a huge amount. It's at least palatable for most, I hope. I don't like raising taxes, but we're faced with some tough cuts, and so I'm looking at spreading this out. My first proposal was to get a little bit from the employees. We decided not to do that. I'm looking to get a little bit more from the citizens that up to date paper today, rather than use it for fund balance. The fund balance is meant for one-time expenses. Usually something like a capital expense. We want to use that for fund the pool, should that be something we decide to do. Or to buy a large capital purchase, like a fire truck, or build a building, or whatever that might be. Those are the things that would be used for. If we can reduce this from about the 176 to about 129, that increase in the levy is about that much. It's about 55,000. It makes it a little bit more palatable that we could think about covering the one-time expenses and saying, you know, these are one-time expenses. We're going to get our expenditure restrained. The ambulance, we may not pay, but that's a one-time expense at this point. The Affordable Care Act assessment, those type of things are one time. This puts us a lot closer to those covering those one-time costs. I'd like to make a motion to change the mill rate to be 8.86.
Second.
Yes, Mary Beth?
I agree with Mark on the fact that we're trying to get this settled now, because when we get to the other proposal, we're talking about waiting till March to decide, and then we would just say, well, we're going to make cuts. The whole fund balance is in, and I keep going back to the fact that we keep saying that we can't use the fund balance. It's not prudent. And our financial advisor, the Ehlers Company that we pay big bucks, advised us that we are so robust, and our acting administrator advised us, we have such a robust fund that we are talking about one-time expenses. They're not capital expenses, but he assured me that they're one-time expenses, and that would be certainly prudent to do this. To vote a tax increase, and I know Mark and I have talked that, you know, what he's, I just overheard you giving the interview that he doesn't want his kids to pay, you know, for what we're spending now. Well, the money in the fund balance was saved by the departments. It was budgeted at one time and then it was saved. So it's actually the money from the past that we're spending. We're not spending their future earnings. It's a past savings. So we are just using money that we already have. Otherwise, we're penalizing the people. And we do hear, I've talked with citizens, we do hear people say, I'm not coming into Clintonville because the taxes are higher. I build my house outside of town, and we don't know if that's, you know, really it, or do they like the wide open spaces. But the point is, we would be having to say and that we had to do a tax increase. And again, keep in mind the one-time expense that we would be funding through this was the fact that we didn't get that bonus for keeping a prudent balance next year. So I'm saying that definitely no tax increase. This is not a sacred fund that we can't use. We're going to be, this county has 25%. We have 52.7%. We're in great shape. This is not something that we're risking not having money to spend.
Yes, Greg.
You can go to Mark first.
Okay, Mark.
Just one last thing. If you think about if we have this rolling capital deficit coming forward, and we're looking at 16 and we need some more money, fund balances for capital purchases, and we're going to start spending that. Second thing to consider, I would project by the end of this year that we're going to have a fund balance transfer to pay for 14. One example is we have about 12,000, 11,000 in contingency, about 12,000. We spent 15 already by the end of this week, paying our interim city administrator. We will need to do a fund transfer balance to the contingency fund, because that is where the motion said the money needs to come from. We're out of money in contingency, pay the interim city administrator, plus anything else that comes up. So we're going to be looking at probably, I'm going to guess $20,000 negative this year in operating, when all said and done. Consider that we're going to have a fund balance transfer this year just to pay for operating as well. We're going to roll that forward.
Yes, Greg.
I agree with Mark in that I hate running a structural deficit, and I know Bill has mentioned that too. If we were to approve tonight to use fund balance significantly, I think we're going to use it in some shape or form regardless, but if we were to significantly tap into it, then we need to significantly look at changes to the budget for the next year so that we do not find ourselves in this position again. The fund balance at this point in time, as Mary Beth stated, is the highest that I think we've seen on record. I know I had a sheet of paper at our last meeting where it went back like 8 or 9 years, and it's never been this high. So, you know, our departments have been very good at managing their money, and that has given us this surplus. And if we have situations now where we're in times of need, questioning, you know, operating the pool or questioning what we're going to cut here or cut there, if we make a decision to you know, increase our taxes to fix that and protect and pad possibly the fund balance, which is already very padded, while we're lopping our arm off to cut costs or raise taxes, doesn't seem to make much sense.
Yes, Bill?
I think it's important to note that the fund balance is not solely the function of people not spending out their budgets each operational year. That's part of it, but it's not as though we saved $1.67 million or whatever it is over the last 4 years because everybody was pinching pennies. They were pinching pennies, but that number includes any amount of cash and assets. So I think it's important to make that distinction, that it wasn't just money stuffed under the mattress and we could have been doing good and useful things with, and now we should do these good and useful things. So I'd like to make that point. Second point I'd like to make is we have terrible streets in this city. When people come talk to me, that's usually when we get down to brass tacks about what they have issues with the city. We have streets that literally have grass growing in them in some places. We can't afford to repair those streets at all or just ridiculously next to nothing on an operational basis. If this group would come together and say, you know what, the fund balance is high, no one disputes that. But instead of using it for these one-time things that are here and gone, why don't we take $250,000 and repair some streets in this town? That's, to me, the smart use of that money. Not using it to fill these one-time holes. We build the street right, it lasts for decades. That's a useful use of that balance. This is not a useful use of that balance. It's an expedient use of that balance, and I, for one, won't support it in the long term.
Yes, Mary Beth?
Well, one thing that was mentioned is that we're going to have to probably have to transfer money from the fund balance to cover, say, the cost for the administrator. Yet we're taking the money for next year. We're paying Ms. Cotter for next year out of this year's budget. So if we pay her out of next year's budget, we can pay him out of this year's budget, and we won't have to take it from the fund balance. So, you know, that what that is, I mean, he's taking her place. So we're paying double this year, and because we're going to take the money for next year for Ms. Cotter's after January 1st through May 1st out of this year's budget. So then we wouldn't have to. And I'd just like to ask Alderman Zeiner, he said that the money in the fund balance doesn't come from savings that we've made in the departments. It's a bunch of cash, and where did it come from?
No, again, you misrepresent what people say. I'm very consistent. What I said was some of the money comes from not being underspent, but the value of them is not all cash. It's not in gold bars sitting somewhere. Unless I'm wrong. Chuck, am I wrong? Is there $1.67 million in
It is
cash?
cash, it is cash.
And it all came
Yeah.
from us not spending our operational
No,
budget?
I wouldn't necessarily say that.
But it is
And
cash.
I haven't gone back to try to find out how the fund balance was built over the years. I think in recent years, that's a fair comment to say, is I think it's the savings. But it is all cash. As I explained at a meeting a week ago, the city has over $4 million of cash assets in banks and CDs, different banks, and in different financial instruments, and all of that basically is liquid. I mean, you can't, it take 2 days to get it, or 30 days in some cases. You pay maybe penalties to cash in CDs, but of that over $4 million, 1.7 of it is undesignated general fund balance. And it's cash. It's not.
All right, my mistake then, I'll admit that. But what I will say is whether it's cash or some portion of cash, I still go back to, if you want to build a road, if you want to do something for this community that's going to last a generation, I'm right behind you with the fund balance. If you want to plug a hole for a year, I can't be a part of it. And that's what I hear us doing.
Yes, Phil?
Question through the chairman.
I don't know if they can hear you, Phil, in the back.
At the beginning of the finance deliberation, going back, there was a statement made that balance was ill-advised by our financial advisors to dip into it. Can you repeat the reasoning or logic behind
They can't hear you.
Sorry.
You can do the mic.
My question is, it was ill-advised to dip into this fund, and would somebody care to tell us why, or tell me why it was ill-advised? So I believe it was Shank Associates, correct?
Yes, Mark? I think so.
Correct. In case we didn't, it was ill-advised. Our auditor, Paul, said yes, it is not a wise financial decision to dip into fund balance and operational expenses. Plain and simple.
But at that same meeting, I don't think he realized the amount that was there at the time. I don't think we had the specifics on the total amount that was in there either. So,
Actually, I
because
think
I was
we,
at that meeting too.
yeah, I think we did,
I
because
know.
he had the audit report with him.
Yeah, but I don't think it said that much. Yes, Peggy?
He had advised not to go below 1 million.
Yeah, there was, I knew there was some stipulation in that conversation.
For cash flow purposes.
Right. Yes, since,
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear Peggy's answer.
oh, Peggy, yes. Re-answer.
He had advised not to go below 1 million.
Yes, Mary Beth?
Well, we use Ellers and people I know, Mr. Eberhard said, you know, Ellers had told us that we shouldn't use this for non-capital expenses. And so when I talked with the county, and they have the same advisor we do, his name is Todd Caves, and so he said, call our same person. So I had the same question you have, Phil, and I called him and he told, and I said, before I called, I left a message, how much is our fund balance? Am I comparing apples to apples with the county? And he said, the county dropped down dangerously low, 14%. They couldn't get a bond rating because they had a low financial rating. When I told him, when he reported to me what ours is, 50.7%, and he said, that is so robust that we could use this whole amount on these expenses and would be at no risk. So that's the reason I sought out the information. I'll give you his number, you can call him. I'll pass it like any, because I went through this with him and he said, yes, it's better, and I told him the things we were thinking about using. He said, definitely the administrator settlement is a one-time thing, he said, but the other things you're talking about, because your fund is so robust, there would be no problem with using it. So I will give you his number. That's Ellers. Now, he's our we call him our financial advisor. The other one they're talking about is our auditor, but this is the person that does our financing. He also told me about this when Chuck said we're going to run out of money in our capital borrowing. I had asked him why we borrow for 3 years, and he said we borrow so little that we do it every 3 years because fees are so expensive. So if we do have to go back in for borrowing and we use that firm, we will have fees for that.
Yes, Greg?
I agree with Bill that our roads are in rough shape, and I've talked to a number of people in my area that make the same statement. I remember one in particular that said, I believe that they've been living here since the 1950s, and the road has never changed. It's the same asphalt that's on the top now as it was then. And we do need to look at roads, but I don't recall using our fund balance for road construction. I think, I remember a conversation I had with our former Public Works Director, Mike McCord, who stated, I forget the dollar figure, but basically that money doesn't go very far when it's spent on roads. Roads are very expensive. And I would be all for getting new roads, but I think that we need to direct our staff to be hunting for block grants and other means to get that funding so we can do it in a more affordable fashion. But I do agree with Bill on the fact that we do need to look at roads, but I wouldn't use a fund balance for it.
Yes, John?
Well, you got two items on this budget that you could, for this year, being 170,000 short, okay? You got two items on this year thing you can cut to get 90,000 off of it, which is a big expense for two items. That's the pool and that armory. Like I stated last night, that armory down there, what's in there, we get moving it now, get it out of there, food pantry, whatever is perishable, get it out of there and close the building down. My motion, you don't even have to drain that boiler. Just shut it down. Leave her freeze up. Just like the inside of that place we just started it up. Thank you.
Yes, Greg?
I think before we look at shutting down pools or the pantry or the old armory, call it what you will, you know, both of those take some serious discussions, and at this point in time, this far along in the budget, we could go and talk about that for a great deal, great lengths, and perhaps come to a consensus, but what I'd like to see is the pool limp along for 1 year, but put it to a referendum for our constituents to voice their thoughts about the pool, rather than this group of 10 individuals unilaterally making a decision about a recreational facility that hundreds of our residents use. So if that referendum comes back that they're not interested in significant funding to, you know, overhaul it or build a new one, then it's going to go by the wayside. I would say that the old armory, I agree with John on that. We do need to look at closing that facility down. It's old, it's in shambles, it's inefficient, but we can't pull the rug out from the pantry and the other people that utilize that facility at this point in time. That would be too quick of a change. So I agree that we need to make action on both of those, but we cannot make action on both of those tonight. We need to let them linger a little bit longer so that we can do it in a way that is less of a rug pulling for our constituents.
Yes, Mark?
Peggy supplied me with some numbers real quick, John. The budget savings for the rec center, would be about 14,000. And there's a lost revenue of about 2,000 in there. And if I remember the email correctly, there was something else missing that would reduce revenue, and I don't know what that was. Potentially from the cancellation of the gymnastics program, the wrestling program, and Winter World arguably could be moved to another location. So there's a little bit of lost revenue in there, but it's about 14,000 from our estimate. Just to give you an idea.
I thought Mark said one time that the budget was 25,000 plus the heat of 12, 15 to run that arm.
I have 25,000 as budget expense. There's some salaries in there, but they wouldn't be, unless you cut a person, it wouldn't be saved. And then insurance, there might be some electric that you have to keep there. I don't know. And so that's about 16,000 in savings. Because I think maybe some of the wages that you're counting in your job wouldn't be able to, you can't just fire.
But you got 50,000 for the pool.
Yeah,
You know?
no argument there, I think it's
Last year,
60,000 and
what we
up.
spent- What we spent last year, 7, or 6 or 7 more to get it opened up. There's a big, just one item, there's a big
That's
cut.
if there's nothing right.
And I will just add on, there's labor that's spent at the pool that you wouldn't save the labor unless you laid off half of the person. Or a person, you know, the labor still exists in the city, so it's 57 minus that labor chunk, we can come up with that. And again, this is what the things we look at.
Justin has wanted to add something, I think, to this discussion.
I think the estimate for 2014 is around 35,000, pretty close to that for the pool because we weren't open for 3 weeks. So this year was a lot more. I proposed to put my guys' salaries in for 15 because they do a lot of maintenance up there. They've never been put into that budget before for the pool. So that's why it's a little bit higher than previous years, because of my guys' maintenance labor.
Yes, Jim?
Well, I guess I'm in favor of closing both of those facilities.
One is
My biggest,
I don't know if it's on.
I guess I'm closing.
It's on.
Just gotta talk into it.
I am in favor of closing both those facilities. The Armory, I realize it's a food pantry, I support the food pantry, and I think it would not take this council or any committee formed immediately to go out on all these vacant buildings that are on Main Street and find a new home for the food pantry. This would be a no-brainer, in my opinion. As far as the pool, if we let this whole thing linger until April or May or whatever, I don't think it's going to happen. And then we're going to be stuck with another year that it'll cost $9,000, $10,000 to get the pool up and running. And how much money will we lose in operating the pool throughout the course of the year? Why do we keep beating ourselves over the head with this pool? We have a beautiful pool that we paid $28, $30 million for that can be, it can handle everything we need as far as the Armory, those gymnastics and all that. There are 2 gyms up at the rec center that can be used for those facilities. I mean, that's why we built it for $28, $30 million. But to keep this, you know, beating ourselves over the head with this thing, and we have no idea what that pool is going to go wrong. If you have 1 heater go out, 2 heaters go out, they cost a ton of money. I know, I was on a park when they did go out. And the fact is, I think we just have to do the right thing for the taxpayers, relocate and find a place to relocate the food pantry. There are plenty of places for Justin to go that can set up an office, and that's it. We'd be in much better shape.
Laurie didn't talk yet, so
Oh, Gloria.
I'll be here first.
Okay, I guess I've been listening about the pool, and I get it, the pool can go to hell in a handbag almost overnight. But I would hope that we would see how it starts out this year. I don't think we can just all of a sudden say, pull the plug on the pool, and you're out of the Armory. You've got to think about it. Where is the stuff going to go? There's quite a few things Justin has down there at the Armory. And I guess we have to weigh out where's your stuff going to go. If there's room at the old electric facility there, swell. I would just see it's a better shaped building. I think it's probably a little more energy efficient. Even though I did notice there's some really nice windows there in the old Armory. But I would kind of, we can't go into it kind of whole and say, okay, we're cutting it now. I would like to see us live along, put a little more thought into it, and then, if it has to be, it has to be. But I am 100% in favor of a referendum because I do not think the handful of us have really that right to make that kind of decision of closing the pool. I personally, I would go behind that curtain and I'd vote I want a pool. is I for the pool. Thank you.
Councilmember Dodd.
Well, I talked with Justin, we ran into each other in the subway, and he said, you know, what originally the idea was, he said this could limp along, and then we had a vote. In fact, we did have a vote one night that everybody voted that we would be in favor of not continuing another year, but to close the pool. You know, Mr. Zeiner's proposal, we're talking about just pass the budget the way it is now with the fund balance, taking all the expenses, and then in April, by April, the staff will be charged with coming up with the cuts. And what I see happening is we have no teeth in that, no guarantee that there are going to be cuts. We could end up with the whole thing going back to the fund balance and none of these cuts. So I really think that as far as the pool, you know, we've talked about the fact that it may make it another year. After that, we said it's done. So that would be a concrete saving that we could make right now. We wouldn't have to, because I'm just concerned that that's not going to be something that's going to be decided. It's going to be, you know, the same group deciding and the same people. The second thing is the Army. I talked with Justin last night. The gymnastics program could go to the gym right by my house in what we call the 1918 building. You know, in fact, Amy pointed out, we were talking about it, she said, you know, they could be, in the summer, they could be in there because it doesn't have to be heated, so the gymnastics program could be in there in the summer. I talked about having the winter whirl on Main Street because it was just so hard to get down there, and it's not a handicap accessible, so I think everything is movable. As far as the food pantry, I had one constituent call me when she saw in the paper that we were charging the food pantry $30 a month. And she was appalled that we're doing that, and I said, I think Jim and I talked, we said, we'd kick it in, we don't want to charge them, but, you know, we're charging them, but they do not have a nice place. You go into the window, in order to get the handicapped people in, they have to go through that open door and reel them in, and those two people work so hard. If we could get them a nice place that people would be able to get in and not go up those deadly stairs to get in there, I think we could relocate them in all time. Terry said that his storage is cold storage, as long as he has electricity, that's fine. Jim pointed out last night that Justin's predecessor had offices 4 different places. We're now talking about there's a lot to decide. Now, the one thing I would point out, and this was pointed out by a constituent that called this week, if we would close the pool, Justin tells me that it's $20 for a pass for the summer, for a summer pass. And I know that up at the rec center, it's more like $300. And I've heard people say, you know, it's expensive. So we would have to have a program where people could go to the rec center and it would be affordable in the summer, because people that can go for $20 cannot go for $300. But I think that's something we could work out. He also tells me that up at the rec center, it's like dead in the summer because nobody wants, you know, to go, and then there's people swimming in the winter. I go in the winter, there are very few people. So we could have the swimming lessons up there, but we would have to allow for, so I say, you know, on Mr. Zeiner's proposal, it's fine to say just pass it tonight and then we'll deal with it in April, but I'm worried that there are no teeth in it, that there are going to be cuts made. And one of the proposals that's been said, with departments having to cut 5%, Mr. Everhart suggested the other night maybe we make it 2 or 3%, but for Mr. Lorge, for Captain Lorge, that is, for Chief Lorge, that is a person, that is a patrolman. And I'm very concerned about that. So I'm concerned about letting it go till April and not us talking about the specific cuts right now and facing the music.
Yes, Greg.
Just to get us back perhaps on track, our motion on the floor is to raise taxes to cover the fund balance utilization that we are looking at tonight. I would be looking for us to stay kind of on track here and perhaps make some sort of a vote shortly about whether or not we want to raise taxes. And I would also like to see separate votes regarding the pool and the armory and those kind of things, so that we can take them one at a time, because they are kind of disjointed from the actual motion that's on the floor right now, which is regarding raising taxes.
Thank you, Greg. That's like I was going to say is that was the motion was to bring the mill rate to 8.86, 8.862, or whatever the scenario was. And again, it's fine to take that fund balance number and bring it smaller. I agree with Mary Beth. It's easy to not make the decisions now and say we're going to make them later and then not make them. And so I'm trying, you know, my first motion was to try to reduce that sum. Another motion to try to reduce that sum, to make those decisions more palatable. if closing the rec center is about a $14,000 savings, okay, 176 becomes 162, now what? You know, versus starting out at 121 or wherever that takes us down to, and then starting and saying, okay, now we're getting closer. So these are big chunks. We have the power to do that now, and not in April.
Well, there's a motion on the floor. Can you read the motion?
Motion by Dornick, second by Zeiner, to change the mill rate to $8.86.
And there was a second, wasn't there?
Yep, Steiner.
Then we have a roll call on that, please?
One second, I just want to make sure that number is correct. 8.860, was it? 862? 862, right? It is whatever scenario number 2 was. That's this very, very small change that we're going to make sure that's correct. Yeah, that's 2. Okay.
And that is also the scenario that raises taxes $22 for an $80,000 home. Their taxes would go up $22. $80,000 per person.
You don't need to speak into the microphone.
Okay, roll call, please.
Kraus,
No.
Dunlavy,
No.
Rath,
Yes?
Steenbach,
No.
Wilson,
No.
Rose,
No.
Keister,
No.
Schley,
No.
Dornick,
Yes. Yes.
Zeiner.
Okay, that motion failed, correct? I just want to make sure. Then we will move on to other budget discussions. Yes,
I would like to make a motion that we continue to keep the municipal swimming pool in the budget for 2015 with the expectation that at a future council meeting, it will be added to the agenda to move forward with putting together a referendum to send to constituents regarding the future of the pool. And I so move.
I'll second that. Is there any other discussion on that, or? Yes, Mary Beth?
My only point is that, I think, Justin, what did you say the number was, like 60,000? You said you added 15,000 in, so 50,000, is that what the pool you estimate would cost in a year?
I think the budget says 57.
The budget says 57, so then I'm just saying then that's 57,000 that we have to cut somewhere else this year. And one of the proposals is we wait to April. And I see that as, really, they talk about big chunks, that's a big chunk. And Justin did a survey, we figured, I think 100 people use the pool. I think that's what he said, 100 people. Well, like the survey, that everybody didn't fill it out, but there's not a real high usership. And so it is for, a segment of people, and I'm not saying it's not a valuable thing, but we do have an alternative for them, and other communities are doing that. Green Bay's not building a pool. New London and Toronto both closed theirs long ago. We're the only one that's still limping along. So I think it's a very unwise decision, and I say, where would we cut then? To those that say don't cut the pool, then I would like you to show me another 50,000 that we can cut.
Yes, Justin.
We actually had over 3,500 visits this year. Typically, it's around 7,000, but we had 3 weeks less of operation due to 2 weeks of fixing the cracks in the diving well and 1 week for school being later this year than years before. So we're around a little over 3,500 visits. Not saying that it's more than 100 people. Definitely during our ball games. Those youth ball games, you're looking at anywhere from 200 kids in 2 sessions. So it's definitely used a lot during the ball tournament.
So I guess I just want to make a comment. If we would go with this and get it on a referendum in April, when do you start preparing the pool to open it?
Typically, it's the end of April, early May sometimes.
So if the referendum would fail, then there wouldn't even be an opening of it.
I think.
Is that what you're saying? Yes, Greg.
The motion that I'm proposing is that we fund it so that regardless of how that referendum turns out, the money would be allocated to run the pool next year. If the referendum fails, then that's it. 2015 would be the last year.
Yes.
If we did have the pool, would we unemploy a person
All the lifeguards, summer help
besides
lifeguards.
someone?
We're talking 2%, 4% of salary.
Okay.
That's it right now for,
So if the majority of the salaries and employee benefits in the budget are lifeguards? Is that
yes.
fair?
We got 9 lifeguards and we have, I think last year we had 4 WSI, 2 of them were lifeguards, so we only had to hire an additional 2 WSI water safety instructors.
Okay.
So we had 11 on staff last year. That'd be a majority of the salary.
All right, so the 57,522, the vast majority would be saved if we did that.
I'd say so. We had, I don't know if we had the value in there for our revenue this year.
That was taken off.
Yes.
I think you raised the budget 10,000 to represent your other staff.
Yeah,
That's what I'm trying to get
That was,
to.
yeah.
I know that you changed the way you allocated the time, the 4 times been up
Take
there.
10 out of it.
Take about 10 out of there, so it'd be really, we'll just say $47,000. Minus the revenue, which is, pool revenue, it's gonna be buried in here a little bit, but it's, pool fees and concessions.
11,462.
Thank you. So it'd be 47,000 minus, yeah, so you're talking another 36. If you keep track, you went from 176 to minus, yeah, you're still 140, and you've cut those 2 out now. Well, the rec center and the,
No, we didn't do that.
and just my
Oh,
talking,
I see.
you know, we're talking about what we gotta get to, we'll cut these through this big chunk. It's not, we're still got quite a bit to go.
Yes, Mary Beth.
I think we've got quite a bit to go. It's more than we've done before that. I mean, it's the first cut. I guess the concern about, you know, are we losing an employee? And I guess we're talking about maybe Justin, but, you know, we are going to be taking over the cemetery. And I heard talk that he's going to have some cemetery work, so maybe he'd rather work the pool. But, you know, there is that new thing coming next year. We haven't really talked about that to the public, but that is a fact.
There's a motion on the floor right now. Isn't there?
Great motion.
Yes, Greg.
So again, just to kind of summarize my thoughts behind my motion and why I feel this way. Gloria, approximately how, or Justin, this would be better for you. How old's the pool?
53 years, I believe.
Okay, so at 53 years of age, and you talk to any Clintonville, lifelong Clintonville resident, I'm pretty sure you're going to easily find that everybody that's lived in this city for that amount of time has gotten their feet wet in that pool at some point in time. And I think it would be fair to them to give them the opportunity to hear their voice on something that has been such a signature part of the community and has a lasting impression. So that's why I would like to see it put to a referendum and fund it for this year.
Yes, Gloria.
Okay, and I'm right behind you on this, Greg. I guess, no, I don't know how many people really remember why the pool even was open. We had drownings down in the Pigeon Pond. I remember going to St. Marcus and we always had a Bible because of one of the people that drowned there. We got in 2nd grade because he was in 2nd grade because they would swim in the Pigeon Pond and they drowned. So the citizens at that point got together and got money together, got funds together, and built the swim pool. I think because it is such a Clintonville, it was built by the people of Clintonville. It was not basically tax dollars that built it to begin with. Yeah, tax dollars got to take care of it now. I just don't think it's fair that us handful of people, we're playing God here and saying, yeah, we're going to close it. No, I think it has to go to a referendum. This is a major choice. It's a major change to the citizens of Clintonville. And also another thing is it's a major thing for the kids to do. Clintonville doesn't have a theater. Clintonville doesn't have this. Clintonville doesn't have that. But we got a pool. And maybe it's a little bit of a part-time babysitter, But gosh darn it, I like that pool and I really wanted to stay, and I think the citizens of Clintonville deserve it. But I definitely do believe that they should make the choice, not us. We're not gods up here, and we have to decide that it's their choice. This is not our choice. Thank you.
Well, I guess I have a different opinion of it. I've had 3 children learn how to swim in that pool. They've all had their swimming lessons. I've been in that pool a number of times. I became a certified scuba diver in that pool. And yeah, since 1970, I've used it. But the fact is, there comes a time when you've got to be realistic about the whole issue. We've had people here talking about this fund money and how much it is and how much we don't want to spend money out of that. Just where does anyone think they're going to find $3 to $5 million after a referendum possibly to build a pool? Well, in other words, we just got through voting down the tax issue. We said don't want to raise taxes, but yet we're going to take all that money out of there. None of this makes any financial sense to me at all. I say stop it now before it gets out of hand.
Yes, Mary Beth.
I'm just wondering if perhaps we could consider separating these things, because it says we're going to leave the pool open for a year. That's one part of it, and the second part is a referendum. And I certainly support the referendum part of it, but I wonder if you would separate it, if we could separate the two. Because I think the referendum is something, you know, we're talking about a $3 to $4 million expense. And so I was thinking if we could separate, you might consider separating the two issues.
No, I don't want to separate the two. My reason for that is prudence, like Jim mentions. I hope that the council can come to agreement that the pool is an expense, it's a recurring expense, and it's something that needs to be looked at. So I want that contingency put in there, that if we are going to continue to fund this, that the stipulation is put in place that we're sending it to referendum. So I don't want to separate the two.
Yes, Jim.
Well, I guess again, I'm looking at the whole picture of that, what the cost of a new pool is going to be. And it gets used for 3 months out of the year, at best. And I don't care what other people's sentimentality is about this outdoor pool. It makes no sense when I look at all the pool closings that have occurred in the whole northeastern Wisconsin region. And to let it go on to next year in April and then try to get a referendum together, then you may as well keep it open for the whole year and cost the taxpayers more money when we lose money this year. And here we're trying to save money. We don't want to raise taxes. And none of this makes any common sense. I say the only logical explanation is shut down the pool and the armory. Period.
Yes, Bill. Oh, yeah, pass that over. There you go, Bill.
I guess I'd like to see this motion moved along. I want to offer one thing. They mentioned several times a $6 million project for a pool. We don't know if something down the road is even going to be a pool. It could be a water park. I believe there's a number of options that are available besides the pool. I think we picture a pool because we've had them for 50 years. What the future holds for that facility could be something entirely different and hopefully a lot less expensive and hopefully break even or a profit center for them.
Yes, Amy.
With the referendum, that would give the citizens, they would have a chance to vote, and if it would pass, then I would say the citizens would be willing then for a tax increase to help fund that. I don't know, that's just my thoughts.
Anyone else? I just have one comment. So now your motion is to have a referendum in April, but open the pool for the year.
keep the budget as
As
is,
it
so
is.
that the pool will be funded for next year. So that,
So what if we run into the problems we had this year where we're shoving all kinds of money into it to get it going? Are we gonna do that?
we can't predict if there's gonna be a hole or a crack or anything. We just know that it was working when we closed it in the fall, and we can presume it will be functional when we open it.
You wanna read the motion again?
Motion by Rose, second by Dunlavy, to keep the municipal swimming pool in the 2015 budget and put it on a future council agenda to hold a referendum.
There wasn't any public future council.
Yep.
Roll call, please.
Dunlavy,
Yes.
Rath,
Yes.
Steenbach,
Yes.
Wilson,
No.
Rose,
Yes.
Keister,
No.
Schley,
No.
Dornick,
No.
Zeiner,
No.
Rouse.
No.
It failed, 4-6. Yes, Mark?
Comment on voting no? Along that?
Yeah.
My reason for voting no, we need to have a plan in place for that. I've said that from the beginning. We need to have a plan and do something with the pool, either reclaim the site or, in this instance, brought up some great ideas of things we can do. We need to explore those. But voting no is I don't want to handcuff where we're going to find $176,000 and not come to fund balance. If that needs to be an option, I need to leave that on the table at this point. I am in favor of the referendum. Alderman Rose did not want to separate those two. We can make a separate motion and say, put it on referendum, that can be by itself. That sounds like a motion, a way we should go. But I just want to leave our options open.
Yes, Gloria?
I just want to say why I voted yes. It's basically rebuttal. I'm voting for the youth of Clintonville. I'm voting for the young kids that are here. I want them to know how to swim. They were not going to go into the inside pool, the indoor pool. It's too much money, as you said before. They're not out in the sun. They're sitting in front of Nintendos constantly. My vote goes for the youth, and that's one of the major reasons I voted for it to go through. I'm really disappointed. I could actually just cry about the way this vote went. I don't think we really thought about it. Thank you.
Yes, Greg?
I'd like to make a motion, seeing that mine failed, to put the pool future to referendum for our voters to decide what to do. So make that an action item for a future council meeting to work on the specifics of that referendum.
Mark? And that referendum would take place in April, then, correct?
Yes.
Can we do a vote right away, or does anybody have comments? Yes.
Amy had mentioned that we're saying, there's one thing, do you want a pool? And number two, will you pay for it? And I guess, that's what Amy was saying, if they voted yes for the referendum, are they saying then that they would pay for it? And I think we have to make that specific that, so we have to say like this could be, it could be $4 million, we could give a range. I mean, I'm not in favor of doing this survey and paying $10,000 for somebody to give us a plan of what it might be. I think we need the referendum first, whether we want it or not. But I think we could give them a range about the possible cost. But again, the cost would have to be linked to it. They'd have to be willing to pay for it.
So right now, given the failure of the last motion, the pool's not going to be full in the spring. And so I feel that we do need to put this to a vote for our constituents to hear out what they want for the future. And as Amy had stipulated, that the referendum is most likely going to be some kind of a special assessment, some kind of a tax increase to the constituents. And so if that's the way that they feel that strongly about a pool, and putting up $3 million possibly could be the high end, so be it.
Yes, Amy?
And that is why I voted yes, was to let them have the opportunity to state their feelings and then say, we are willing to pay for this.
Yes, Jim?
Well, that's all nice and fine, but what I'm thinking is that if we're gonna put out a referendum, everyone keeps using the word pool. Now, why don't we include the word water park? And it could be a lot less expensive. I don't know what we'd all include in it, but before we can go up with a referendum and ask people to fund it, we'd have to know the cost of a pool versus a water park. I mean, we don't have any idea what we're really talking about here.
Yes, Gloria.
Okay, I'm on Park and Rec, and I have been, Maggie Falzine has also been looking at different areas with grants. There's a couple of them out there. There's the I think it's Home Depot, that is like almost match to match. If your depressed area, if your poverty level, you know, how much poverty is considered in there. And there's a lot of opportunities out there. I just think we do have a gentleman that's also going to help us write these grants. So I'm sure after probably the holidays, after Thanksgiving, Christmas, we're going to get on. There's a gentleman that's done many of them, and he is willing to help us out. So we'll be on it. There's quite a few different ones out there that we just have to get our feet wet and just start writing grants. And possibly we might just luck out and get something. And I guess I would say if pool aquatic center is the word, not water park, it's aquatic center. And I think actually an aquatic center could actually be profitable for us because they're also, they're starting to incorporate more healthy food choices for the kids. The pools are open almost all day, I believe, aren't they? So the kids, you get them there, they've got a lot of money, they all spend money on stuff to eat, and it's profit. You know, food, you can make a lot of money on food products, so it actually might make Clintonville a little money too on the side. Thank you.
Great.
So to get back to what Jim said about, you know, we have no idea what we're talking about here. The referendum, what we're voting on tonight is not the specifics of what kind of water park we're going to want. This is just simply saying, do we want to go down that path and begin researching this, and how are we going to put that referendum together? This is not the specifics of how that's going to even be written. We're far away from that. This meeting is not the place or time for it. This vote is about, do we even want to go down that path looking at doing a referendum? And I hope we can move this meeting along and take a vote on that soon.
Anybody else have any comments on that? Yes, very
Yeah,
good.
my question was, we're just going to have to, if we're asking people to pay for this, we are going to have to give them, and I just think that has to be a part of that. They're asking them to pay for them, just like you said.
Well, that'll go to committee then.
Yeah.
If this passes, that'll go to committee.
So that's.
And that'll be ironed out at the committee level. But that, Greg's right, that's not discussion right now. So, okay, the motion is to put the swimming pool to a referendum at the April election, correct?
And on future council agenda.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Rath,
Yes.
Steenbach,
Yes.
Wilson,
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Easter,
Yes.
Schley.
Yes.
Dornan,
Yes.
Steiner,
No.
Kraus,
Yes.
Dunlavy.
Yes. So just out of clarity now, if it fails in a referendum, the pool would not open this year then?
Next year, the pool's not opening, that's done.
Right. Well, no, it's not done.
I thought he said,
It's in the budget. No, we only voted on a referendum.
no.
The 4 to 6 sales vote was.
Yeah. Right. Oh, okay.
No, he had to keep it open in the budget. He said to keep the pool open, and we voted no against that.
We voted no to have a referendum.
No, the most important thing was to keep it open for this year. That was his motion and
Okay.
a referendum, so it's not in the budget now.
Okay. Yes.
No,
Mark.
I disagree. The motion was to force it to open and that we want to put the vote.
Right.
Right now in the budget, as
That's
we
how I
have,
understood.
That's
has
what I
all the
understood.
operating expenses in there.
Right.
So you'd have to make a motion to take out all the operating expenses. This was to force it to open and to put it to referendum. And as I stated in my no vote, I wasn't in favor of forcing it to open. That hand ties us to try to figure out the money. So it's in the budget right now.
So you weren't voting it down. You weren't voting it down.
No, I didn't think so.
Could I just ask Alderman Was that your intent to force the pool to open this year? Was that your intent?
Yes.
That's not the way the motion was.
But that was his intent,
My motion was to fund it so that it would open.
to ensure that it was funded, and we voted no to fund it.
Okay.
Well, we voted no to ensure it's funding. We didn't specifically
Yeah.
vote to remove it.
It can be cut, yeah.
Well, that's right. If we choose to do that,
Well, yeah, I'm just trying to, you got me all confused,
So
because I
Greg
thought I
Greg had
voted
the-
where it was
That's
supposed
right. That's what we all voted. That's what we all thought.
I didn't think that I voted to close the pool.
What do you think?
I thought I voted for a referendum, and we're not closing, we didn't take that out of the budget, it's still in the budget.
But that was his motion. That was his intent, Jeannie.
I didn't take it that way.
Well, I did.
Okay. Yes, Bill?
my understanding was that the motion was there to make sure that we had to open the pool, that we were required to. To me, the opposite of that is not the pool is taken out of the budget. To me, the opposite is it's up to, we're not forced to do it. We could cut the pool. In my mind, if we had voted yes for that, we would have been handcuffed ourselves to, they would not change anything about the pool operations. It would have to have remained open no matter what else happened. That's how I took that motion. If I misunderstood it, then that's my mistake. You're correct. How I understood it.
Yes, Mark.
The question is, so now what, we're sitting with the budget that was recommended by the Finance Committee. It carries $176,102 fund balance carryover. We voted down several options to reduce that amount. There was an option to force the pool open that was voted down, so we're sitting with the recommendation from the Finance Committee of an 8.62. You can read it on your sheet. That's the recommendation. We've been discussing what to change about the recommendation. That's where we're at.
And that's the motion that was made last night. Yes, Mary Beth?
I would move that we close the rec center and take it out of the budget and begin making plans to relocate the things that are in there immediately.
So you're voting to close the armory?
Yes,
the rec center.
that's called rec center.
Do I have a second to close the armory immediately? That was your motion to close it immediately?
Well, not immediately.
Well, January 1st.
Well, we're taking it out of the budget, so we would have to begin the process of relocating the tenants.
Can we put on that motion, Peggy?
I interpreted it as a motion by Keister, second by Kraus, to close the rec center and take it out of the 2015 budget and make relocation plans.
That's fine.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Are there any comments on that? Yes, Gloria?
Where's the stuff going?
Are you asking me that?
Mm-hmm.
May I answer?
Yes.
Yes, well, police chief said that his stuff can stay right there. The food pantry would locate to a suitable building, a much better building for them. The things that Justin talked about, we have the other gyms, that we would use the other gyms. The Winter World would go to the community center and we would relocate Justin's office.
Yes, Gloria?
Okay, I got a rebuttal on this, because where is the food pantry gonna go for $30 a month, or is the city gonna subsidize that in the amount? Most businesses, most buildings downtown that you're looking at Main Street you're looking at $300 to $400 a month. We gotta make up that difference then, or is the food pantry gonna make up that difference? Where is the equipment gonna go? There's some that can be cold, but there's some that's gonna be, they need warmth. Where are they gonna work when they have something that's broke? Where are they gonna work? I mean, we don't have a plan, you're just saying, close it, and we're done with it. And it's like, no plan in place, don't like it.
I just we
Yes,
don't
Fred.
make a plan.
Okay, so here we are around Christmas time, when people are going to need the community the most, and the food pantry needs. And instead of providing for our community, the food pantry is going to be hustling and bustling to figure out how to move all of that grocery stock that they have down there, all their non-perishables, and find some new place for it that they don't have figured out yet. We're giving them 30 days, basically. No, we're giving them 30 days, or we're almost to the end of November. And so we're funding it through December, is what you said. that's it. That doesn't make sense.
Yes, Mr. Bell.
I didn't say that this was gonna happen in 30 days. I said we're taking the action now to begin planning to do it. There was not any deadline. We certainly aren't closing the food pantry before Christmas.
Yes, Mark.
So my concern with this motion is that what happens if we don't find a place? We've taken the money out of the budget. We can talk about where we want things to go, but to make those plans in place in the next, we'll say generously 45 days. 40 days, I know it sounds like a lot of time, but we have to make sure we give the proper respect to those organizations that are in there that we said can be there to help them find a spot. If we can do that in 50 days, say it's after the first of the year, great, we don't have to spend the money. But my worry is if we take it out now and we don't put it in there, then what do we do if we don't find come up with a plan?
I just want to call on Justin, because it's his building. Well,
I just need some direction, because I have rentals through
well, that's
winter.
just if he's got people
I have
in the
rentals
building.
there, I have Winter World that I started advertising for. I just need some sort of direction. It can be sometime in the middle of winter or be.
Yes, Mayor Bell.
Because, I mean, there was no time limit set on it. I'm trying to say that we're putting it in our plan. Obviously, we're not closed down until everything was relocated. And I didn't put any time limit on it. I'm just curious, what kind of rentals do you have, Justin?
Calvary Church, they rent it. They're going to be renting starting this Friday, every other Friday for 2 hours. I got that rental. Could be some more in the new year, I'm not sure. But they just called, I just sent out a contract, and they want to do that through the winter during the cold months.
How much would that be, Justin?
It would be $36 per Friday.
And how much do you think it costs to heat it up?
It's just going to be for those couple hours, so.
Right.
It would be, the way that the motion reads is to cut the 2015 budget for the armory, correct? So January 1st, there is no money to heat the building. And so if you don't give the food pantry and these other people that are involved in that facility enough time to relocate and enough time to move all their supplies and stock, they're going to be left hung out to dry. And so I think that it would be better to close the building down. Yes, as I stated before, it does need to get closed. It is definitely inefficient, and we need to look at alternatives. Let's do it in the summertime. I recognize that we're going to be paying some heating costs for a few months here during the winter, but boy, when you look at the community and what they need, I don't think that having them relocate to a rental facility in the dead of winter is going to go across very well.
Yes, Justin.
Another concern of mine is that building is not set up for winterizing. Alderman Wilson said just let her go, let the pipes burst. We got a lot of stuff down there, so if you're gonna let the pipes burst, it's gonna be a mess. The whole basement's gonna be covered, radiators are gonna be popping upstairs. You can't just let her go. You gotta have a plan to winterize that building. It's gonna cost a little bit of money to do that as well. It's tough to do it in the dead of winter.
Yes, Bill.
And I think this is a good illustration of, we do have some areas, I think we all agree could be cut one way or another. What we don't have is a plan. And the idea of giving us the first 3 months of 2015 was to create a thoughtful plan that will allow us to escape with as few expenses as possible, but without as little collateral damage as possible. I wish we would have started these discussions 6 months ago, but we didn't. So now here we are, and the question is, how do we best transition to these change in services for the folks? And making unilateral decisions tonight is certainly our right, but we better be prepared for the unintended consequences of that, and Justin just pointed one out there.
I go back to my earlier question under Alderman Zeiner's proposal that we use take all the money from the fund, the surplus fund, and then in April they will come up with the necessary cuts. And it does say in his proposal, put all the money back in the surplus fund. So that means cuts would have to be made $176,000, and that would be left until April. And of course, the year is half finished. So we'll be paying these expenses at that time. Justin will be, hiring his people and so forth. So my concern is, what assurance do we have that it's going to be easier in April than it is tonight? That's why I made the motion, kind of to force this discussion. Sometime these decisions are going to have to be made. It's not going to be popular, but I think they've been talking about this a long time.
Well, there's a motion on the floor, correct?
Right.
Does anybody have any comments on that motion on the floor?
Could it be repeated, please?
Just one moment, John. Repeat the motion, please, and we're going to vote on that if John doesn't have to comment about this. Okay?
Motion by Keister, second by Kraus, to close the rec center and take out of the 2015 budget and make relocation plans.
Do you have a comment on that motion?
Yeah, what's going to be the heating expense from now until April on that building? About a rough estimate.
Depends on how whole winter is.
Rough estimate. Say it was like last winter.
Justin, do you have a rough estimate?
Well, I think I put in there 13 for what I got in there.
The whole year?
The whole year, 11, 322.
That's next fall.
Yeah, and winter started earlier this year. My first year, it was 70-some degrees in March. So I can't tell you exactly what that number is going to be. Like I said, right now, I don't have that thing running every day. When I first started here, it was running 24/7, that boiler. Now I have it down to 5 hours a day. I'm anticipating dead of the winter, it could be up to 8 to 10 hours a day. But I don't have it running. That budget's figuring that it's running 24/7. But I've already made cuts now. And if we have any rentals, of course, we have a time clock down there on the boiler. We'll set it so it's on during those rentals, and then it'll be off. So we're trying to keep that building warm enough where the pipes aren't bursting, but it's at a minimum right now.
Okay, so then you're going to have 11,000 more according to Bill's plan to find next spring. Just say 11,000 more to find. It's a hard time finding any now.
Well, let's take a vote on the motion that's on the floor.
Steva,
No.
Wilson,
Yes.
Rose,
No.
Keister,
Yes.
Schley,
No.
Dornet,
No.
Steiner,
No.
Kraus,
Yes.
Dunlavy,
No.
Rath.
No.
Fails. That motion failed. So we're still back at the drawing board. With, any other comments? Yes, Greg?
I'd like to make a motion that we continue to provide the budgeted items to operate the, what do we call it, the recreation center through, what do you think, about June of next year, with the expectation that all rentals and this includes the food pantry would be relocated by that time. And from there on forward, there would be no money allocated to the rec center.
Second.
Any other questions? Comments? Yes, Justin?
You guys be a little more specific on that. We have insurance on that building. If we're gonna have cold storage there, we're gonna have a little bit of an electric bill, definitely for the police, fire. If we keep it for the city, we're gonna need lights in there in order to access our cold storage. So we might have to be a little more specific in there, insurance and electrical. I don't know if we're gonna have any maintenance on a cold storage building, that might be something you wanna look at too. If we're gonna keep it a cold storage building, unless you're gonna take everything out of it, that's your choice.
I rescind my motion. It's not ready. We need more talk.
Well, did you see the motion that was laying on your desk from our minutes from last night? Did everybody read the motion that the finance committee meeting?
I think you said my second.
Pardon? Oh. Oh, you didn't rescind it? Okay.
I would think that, that this is, it's something like what I was trying to get at before, and I was supporting this because we're trying to give some teeth in this, that something's gonna happen, and that we're consciously saying, we realize that this is a white elephant and it's costing us money. And yes, we did talk about, when we talked about the alternatives, we did talk about needing electricity, and there would be some cost. The cost that we would not be incurring would be the heat. So if you could amend it, right, to say no longer allocate money for heating costs, I think that would work.
Justin, how would you like to see this put together so that we can let that building down gracefully?
I like the idea of waiting for the warmer months. Get through a year of winter world, since I already started advertising. Try to find a new location for 2016. But one thing you're gonna be able to save is salaries, employee benefits, telephone's already gone, gas would be gone. You're gonna have a little bit for electric. The other stuff in there would be an expense allowance, that's gonna be gone. Operating expenses will be gone. Repair and maintenance, there might be a little bit there. You're gonna keep it a cold storage. And you're gonna have insurance on the building, which is shy of $300. So you could have, I don't know, somewhere around $1,200 to $1,500, maybe total, that's just a guess, with electric and insurance and with a little bit of maintenance. You know, bulbs are gonna go out. If you have a cold storage, you gotta have exit signs there, lit up all the time. Smoke alarms are gonna have to be powered up at all times. The fire inspector goes through there, we get fees on that. So you gotta have some sort of maintenance in there if you're gonna keep it a cold storage.
Yes, Mark?
Just to clarify, the labor and benefits would be repositioned to a different account.
Yes, yes they
So
will.
it's not a save, it's all those the savings out of the rec center.
They'd be dropping out of the rec center, but
They go to some other
Yes.
account unless we're gonna move someone to a point.
be going right back to, for that account, we have, I think it's 2% for one individual, or for two individuals, and then we have a 4% for another individual. So it's minimal, but that would more than likely go back into park, and we just won't have to clean it anymore. That's the biggest thing. Cleaning it for rentals. Yeah.
Do you have a comment?
Yeah, I guess I'd like to recommend that you go back to Alderperson Reinert's proposal. And look seriously at that. I think it's going to be awfully difficult to find $176,000 of cuts in building closings. You're not finding it. So, as I see it, you're going to be going down a path of a combination of things. Decisions on facilities, when to close them, when to operate them, how to close them. I think you're going to be looking at still some budget cuts during the year to make this, if you want to totally eliminate the fund balance, I think you're going to be still looking at some budget cuts during the year, possibly some staff positions. And I just think this all needs study, as a package put together. And I guess I would ask you, I know the sense of Alderman Reinert's motion is that there will be no fund balance use. I guess I would ask you to consider maybe leaving that as an open door yet also, because maybe you're not going to quite get there. Maybe you're going to still have to use some fund balance, but maybe we can get it down to a minimal amount. And I think that's where you're going to have to weigh staff cuts, budget cuts, going into mid-year against the issue of maybe still having some fund balance left. And I think that'll be a tough decision, but as I see it, it's going to take a whole package of this stuff if you want to eliminate that $176,000. These two facilities you're talking about aren't going to get you anywhere close. I understand it's a good start, but they're so problematic and they're not, they're just not cut and dried. When are you going to do that? And I think that you're going to need this 3 months for the staff to work that out and to consider budget cuts probably mid-year that you didn't want to consider now. I mean, we've talked about cutting departments' budgets 5%, the major ones, and no one seems to want to do that. maybe we can get that down to 1 or 2%. But I think, I just don't see where you're gonna come up with this kind of money arguing over those two facilities.
Yes, Mary Beth?
Okay, and I agree with that. I remember the first night Chuck addressed us, and he said, you know, he's seen deficits like this before, and the only way you're going to meet deficits like this is with salary cuts. And then we talked about the fact that it would really be 3 managerial salaries. Well, we only have like 5 or 7 or something like that. You know, so we're very light on staff, and so we all kind of stood up and think, well, we certainly can't do that. The alternative is some of this stuff, which is some money. You know, I think it is in Alderman Zeiner's proposal right now that the objective would be in April to come up with enough cuts that we don't use fund balance, and I just think that's, you know, unrealistic. You know, it's unrealistic because we already talked about, tonight we have not come up with anything that anybody agrees to cut. And I just wondered what's going to be different in April. You know, if we don't address it this month, why is it going to be different in April? And, you know, will it be the same finance committee will be looking at it, the same staff members will be looking at it, they've been looking at it. You know, we talk about, well, what if we had started earlier? Well, yes, we could have talked about these closings, but the point is the issues are still here. We still have the objections that we're going to have. They're not changing their sentimentality and so forth. And when we're talking staff cuts, as I said, I'm very concerned when we talk staff cuts. You know, police is one of those, and just, you know, I can't imagine City Hall or any of these departments. I mean, they've all been scrambling, and we're talking manager type salaries. We're not talking just workers, and that's, you know, so I just haven't heard where these cuts are going to come from in April, and I'm just looking for some suggestion from Alderman Zeiner where these cuts might come from in April. $176,000.
I'm sorry, what?
I just said, I'm looking, where do you think that, you know, by postponing this to April, where do you think $176,000 might come from in April?
Sure, I'd be happy to answer your question, because this is what I think. I think that Clintonville, along with its elected officials, needs to face up that we have to seriously restructure some of the services that we provide. Your solution to maintain a structural deficit, to hold on, I might say, cling to the status quo, you're right, it doesn't work. And while we could spend down the fund balance any amount that we so choose to cover any of these things we've talked about, it's a short-term fix to a long-term problem, which is, and let me be clear, Mary Beth, we need to change the type and complexion of the services we offer to better fit the tax burden that our citizens have to pay. That's not a process that can be done at night. That's a process that's going to take time. It's a process that's going to touch every department. I don't pretend to have the specifics in front of me today. I think over the course of 120 or 150 days of thoughtful consideration, we could find it. But we clearly don't have the appetite to raise taxes. We clearly don't have the appetite to cut much of anything. So to do that, you're going to have to restructure services. We're going to have to make a list and to prioritize as leaders without a referendum to say this is what we think the city can afford. If we're not willing to do that, then we shouldn't be here. So I hope I've clearly answered your question as to where those cuts would come from. And if you're not ready to say, madam, that we may need to cut staff, then I would suggest that you have not given this thoughtful, careful consideration.
Can I just ask one follow-up? So, like services, I mean, I'm just thinking about the services that the city offers. We offer safety, we offer fire and police, we offer utilities, but that's a different budget, right? That's a different budget. So then what other services? Street plowing and so forth, but what other kind of services? I just can't think of what else there is.
I don't understand your question. I can't help you not think of things. I don't know what your question is.
My
and I'm not
question
sure
is just name
how it's
some
germane. I'm not in a debate with you, madam. I'm not running against you.
I'm just asking some questions about.
I know,
services.
you're just asking questions, you're just asking pointed, backhanded, passive-aggressive questions to try to make your point.
Madam Chairman,
Maybe you'd like to censure me.
well, I think passive-aggressive is not a term that should be used in the discussion with elected officials.
Oh, well, thanks for the input. I'll make the footnote. Are there any other psychological terms we shouldn't use, Mary Beth?
I
You have a
think
list
this is
of
getting
those?
out of hand. This is getting out of hand. It's getting way out of hand here. Yes. There's a motion on the floor. There's not a, no, there's a second on the floor. The motion got rescinded. But Mary Beth is not rescinded her second.
No,
Under, what was the motion, but.
we were way past that.
No, you wouldn't rescind it. You wouldn't rescind it, you said.
No, I thought we voted on the thing about, since
No,
we
we're
voted
not.
on the thing
No.
about the.
We're on this motion, yes, would you please?
Continue to provide budgeted items to operate the rec center through June of 2015 with expectation that all rentals be relocated at that
I
time.
withdraw the second.
So is there any other motion? Yes, Mark?
Just looking forward, if we continue where we're going, and we're having trouble coming up with this money now, let's face it, we need a plan. That's part of the reason why I think several of us, I'll speak for myself, going to get certain things, we don't have a plan. We need to understand the plan. So, these things are not going to be comfortable. We are talking about probably reduction of staff because we'll have to cut services. Cut services, we have to make reduction of staff. I made that point several times tonight that if we close the old armory or the rec center, we don't just unemploy that 2 or 4% of people, we still have that expense. I made 3 motions over the course of this budget that total over $77,000. They're not popular. I'm not happy to make them. We voted them all down. That would have put us close or under 100,000 of fund balance. If we could have lived with that, these motions would have made sense. If they gladly covered the one-time expenses. I'm worried. We get to April, what are we going to do?
Yes, Greg?
Chuck, looking at the budget here, would it be possible to propose accepting the budget, utilizing the fund balance to the tune of, what dollar figure are we at, 176,000? And so the only difference then, just I'm kind of looking for a little clarification here. We've got kind of like 2 options on the table. We could utilize that 176 probably to its fullest extent, or at least put it out there saying it's in the budget, we might use it. Or we could go with Alderman Zeinert's option, which means that we're gonna put it out there, but with the understanding that we're probably never gonna touch it because we're gonna meet in March, by March, to come up with alternative plans. So that is the 2 options that we have, basically.
Yeah, you can fund the budget with the fund balance and not do anything else. I don't think anybody is satisfied with that option. I mean, and that's why I think Alderman Zeinert's proposal is a good one. I guess I'm just cautioning you that I'm not even sure you're going to get to options that can guarantee that fund balance isn't going to get touched. He's pretty specific that you're gonna totally eliminate the use of that fund balance during the year by coming up with options to cut the budget some way or another, restructure things. And I might have thought last week that you could get there. After listening to all of you tonight, I don't think you're necessarily going to get there. So, but let me ask this: even if you adopted that motion, does that preclude the council from coming back with an alternative plan that says, well, we couldn't get there, we're still going to use $50,000 of fund balance, but we're going to cut these positions, we're going to restructure this way, we're going to close these facilities? I think that option is still open to the council throughout the year. It sets sail on a mission, to try and do it this way, but ultimately your plan's gonna determine what you're gonna do. And I think that's, the council's ultimately gonna decide if you're using some fund balance or not, or if you're gonna be able to get a program in place where you totally eliminate the need for it.
One follow-up, Bill? Does your proposed thing, does that include this 5% budget cut and those other things that are written above it in this summary report?
No, those were the 3 or 4 options on, I'm sorry.
No, that's,
The 3 or 4 options that were there, and I'm going, like I said, we'll have to go ahead and bring it here to balance the budget. I mean, essentially, from my perspective, you could have cut 5% off all the major budgets, way 1. Way 2 is cut nothing and use fund balance. And way 3 is some combination thereof of using remaining fund balance and potential cuts. So it's really up to the mind of the council what flavor of that they have appetite for.
Amy had a comment.
I guess that Bill had already answered that, and Chuck alluded to it, that we would work really hard, but Bill, correct me, you would be, from what you just said, if we needed to, we could take some.
The council could, yeah, without question, the council has the right to put together whatever package they deem best for the city. Personally, I'm not in favor of using the fund balance. I think I've been fairly clear on that since the beginning. However, I may very well be in the minority there. I mean, honestly, this meeting could have been over with probably an hour ago if everybody who agrees to use fund balance would have just said use fund balance and let's go home. But there may be the appetite for that. I recognize I'm probably squarely in the minority there. So, but that's a long answer to a short question. Yes, you could certainly do that.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yes, Greg?
I think you're not in the minority, Bill. I think that everybody here wants to do what is right financially. And I also agree with you that I don't want to run a structural deficit, and I would like to come up with better figures. So I would, and I think that while your motion while your proposal looks looks really good, we may not be able to hit all of those targets in March, but at least it's a good starting point. And if we wind up making half of it, that's better than using the fund balance entirely. So that being said, I would make a motion to use the proposal that Bill Zeinert has included in this budget, so that we'll continue to operate using the fund balance with the understanding that we're going to work on a better proposal come March.
So you're going to go with scenario 1?
Yeah, but the scenario is really not out of the question either, because all it means is that we're going to hash this over further. And so Bill would love to have scenario 1. I'm sure that everybody would love to have scenario 1 if we could find out a fair and equitable way to do it. We might find ourselves somewhere in between scenario 1 and scenario 3, of using some kind of fund balance. I mean, by voting for this, it's not locking us into saying we're not going to use any fund balance. It's saying we're going to meet and we're going to work on this, and we're going to get a better proposal put together by March 31st. So Chuck made that point.
I'll second that.
So you're going with the recommendation of Finance Committee meetings motion from last night?
Mm-hmm.
And that would be scenario 1, levying an $1.62 tax rate and using $176,102 from fund balance, charging the Finance Committee to work with departments, administration, and citizens to present a plan to replace the fund balance supplement with like cuts in the 2015 operating budget. that your motion? That's the motion we had last night. Yes,
Just to add to that, does that mean the rest of the numbers are as presented? It doesn't say that, it just says that we're using that. It implies that, but I think maybe we should be clear that the rest is as presented. Or not.
and the rest of the budget is as
And
presented.
so the scenario one, does that include, I'm not clear, scenario one, scenario one was the one that Administrator Kell put out as opposed to my scenario two. Is that correct?
Correct.
Budget has presented.
And so then those are those numbers, so that defines the next. That's, I guess, clear enough.
And that would be the budget as presented. Yes, Mary Jo?
One, in the description, in Chuck Hill's, motion, it says that, in this document, it says the study will involve city departments, city committees, and the common council, and will provide public hearings on proposed spending reductions. So, we had one tonight, and there wasn't any input, and I'm just concerned that tonight not one suggestion was made about a cut that, that would be made. The ones that were made, no, we made them, but they all were voted, they were all voted down. So I guess I'm concerned that in the past, this year when we had the budget deliberations, a memo was sent out that we were going to have budget deliberations, and the finance committee was going to be meeting, and I thought all the council members, were invited to come and participate. And at the end we kind of were, but at the beginning I kind of felt like that I was an unwelcome guest at the table. And I'm just wondering, is this going to be a finance committee project, or is it going to be a council project?
Well, Greg had his hand up first, right now.
What this proposal buys us is some time. This proposal, we gotta have a budget approved, and this provides us some time. Now, if citizens don't show up at those public hearings to provide silver bullet options, so be it, then it's gonna be left task to us, but that will be for that place and that time.
Yes, Mark?
Again, passive aggressive. Mary Beth, you directly addressed that. You have a way of taking over meetings and talking out of turn. There needs to be order in these committee meetings, and that's why this is the way the committees work. Input is always welcome. I've invited you to talk to me on the side. We've done that, but it's not free will to talk during the committee meetings by everybody there.
Well, we did have a motion for the swimming pool, and we had that motion passed as far as the swimming pool, didn't it? With going to a referendum.
No.
The referendum?
It passed?
Yes.
Yeah, the referendum passed, yes, for the
Referendum,
swimming pool,
the
yes.
referendum passed, yes.
So that we will have some input from that as far as proceeding with this part of the budget. That could change our budget too. So yeah, that did pass tonight.
We're still going to operate the pool this year though, correct?
Well, if they voted down.
Well, I mean,
I don't know.
right now, it's in the
Unless-
budget that
It's
we
in
will
the budget,
operate.
yes.
Unless things change between now and March.
Okay, all right, just,
Right.
I'm so confused, there's too much that I don't know.
Yes, Greg.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was out.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Can you repeat the motion, please, Peggy?
Motion by Rose, second by Dunlavy to approve scenario one, levying an $8.62 tax rate and using $176,102 from fund balance, charging the finance committee to work with departments, administration, and citizens to present the plan to replace the fund balance supplement with light funds in the 2015 operating budget.
Any other comments on that? Roll call, please.
Wilson,
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Easter.
Yes.
Schley.
Yes.
Dornan.
No.
Steiner.
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Dunlavy.
Yes.
Rath.
Yes.
Steenbach.
Yes.
That came on board or not?
I don't know. Yeah, you can change your vote.
Okay, I'm gonna,
Okay. So now what is it? 8 to 2. The budget has been adopted, and we will be tasked with a lot of work in finance. Don't you think it would be appropriate for some of that to go as well my concern is, because it's just too repetitious. Yes.
My suggestion would be maybe build on that is maybe have some joint committee meetings where we have a joint meeting with finance and
Right.
then you get to that input and
Right up to that.
yes, it involves a lot of us on this council, but maybe not all, but it also brings in the other parts of that committee that where the citizens run.
That's good. Yeah.
Airport, have citizen representatives.
Okay. No adjournment? Before we adjourn, just a, thing just wanted to do that,
We don't have time to wait till the next council meeting because the notices have to get out on this. I've been approached by quite a few staff in the city that would like us to close for Christmas on Christmas Day and the day after, instead of Christmas Eve. So really Thursday, Friday, instead of normally Wednesday, Thursday. And I think likely there's not going to be a lot of foot traffic on Friday after Christmas and the New Year after next week, offices are really dead. But the personnel manual doesn't really give me the authority to make that change, so I'm asking you if that's okay, if you're okay, fine with that, if we put notices out to the public and we close Christmas Day and the day after. It's not on the agenda, I just want to know that you're not going to have heartburn with it. You're okay to move forward.
Yeah, me too.
You're an elected official, you're always available.
Motion to adjourn?
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn, Gloria, you have a second?
Second.
Very good. All in favor? Aye.
All right.